Have you ever done a serious comparison between the beliefs of popular mainstream antinomian forms of Christianity with what the Bible actually says? If what Christians today believe about the Torah being obsolete is true, then why is it one of the first things we read in the Bible is a story about people breaking the commandment of God and being banished from the tree of life? And one of the last things we read about is how it is those who keep the commandments of God being given access to the tree of life. Why is it that in the book of Revelation, it says that they are singing the song of Moses, which comes from the book of Deuteronomy, if the law is done away with now? Why does it say in the book of Hebrews that the Sabbath remains if the Sabbath, as Christians believe, no longer remains? Why did Yeshua say that if we love him, we will keep his commandments? A statement first made several times within the books of Moses. If we don't have to keep the commandments, why does 1 John chapter 2 and verse 4 say that anyone who claims to know Yeshua but doesn't keep the commandments is a liar and the truth is not in them? Why does the Bible define righteousness in Deuteronomy chapter 6 as living by the Torah and define sin in 1 John 3 as breaking the Torah? Why were the Sabbath and the appointed feast days kept by everyone who wrote the Bible, kept by Yeshua himself, and are to be kept in the coming millennium, but Christians think they live in some magical window of time where they don't have to keep them? Why do Christians think that God's law has changed and they no longer have to keep appointed times like the Sabbath and feast days when Daniel chapter 7 says it will be the work of Satan to change God's law and appointed times? Why do Christians think God's law is a curse when Paul said God's law is holy, righteous, and good? Why do Christians think God's law was temporary and only for the Jews when the Bible describes God's law as eternal and meant for all humanity? Why do Christians claim that they follow Jesus when they don't follow the law the way he did? Why do Christians think they are blessed by God when the Bible always connects the blessing of God with obedience to God's law? Why do Christians say that they do not live by the Old Testament, but then they are always quoting from the Old Testament? Why do Christians celebrate holidays that originate from paganism and idolatry like Christmas, Easter, and Halloween when Deuteronomy 12 says not to inquire about and adopt the religious practices of the pagan nations? Why do Christians speak about what God called an abomination when it comes to pride sins, but have no regard for eating things God said not to eat, like pork and shellfish, which is equally called an abomination in Scripture? Why do Christians think the food laws regarding what is clean and what is unclean are done away with when Isaiah 66 says that this will be the criteria for Messiah's judgment at the second coming, and unclean beasts and birds are still considered unclean in Revelation 18? Why? If we are no longer supposed to live by God's law anymore, does Revelation chapter 14 and verse 12 say that holiness involves both keeping the commandments of God and following the faith of Yeshua? Why do Christians think the best way to honor the birth of Yeshua is with a practice that bears a striking resemblance to what Jeremiah 10 condemns, and what is very similar to the way many pagan religions worship goddesses associated with trees? Why do Christians think the best way to honor the resurrection of Yeshua is by looking for colored eggs left in a field by an imaginary rabbit on a holiday bearing the name of a pagan goddess, when he said to remember his sacrifice through keeping the Passover meal? Why do Christians go to churches on Sunday when nobody in the Bible did that, when everyone who wrote the Bible gathered in synagogues for the reading of God's law on the Sabbath? Why is it that Christian religion and the beliefs of Christianity always seem to be completely different from what the Bible teaches, when Christianity claims to be a Bible-based faith? It really is perplexing. And I do hope that this brief message will cause you to stop and really think hard about Christian beliefs and what the Bible actually teaches. If you have never done so, I would encourage you to read through the Bible. And when you do, as you read what it says, I want you to consider why so many things you read about are not done in Christian churches, and why so much of what you have seen done in Christian churches is not actually found in the Bible. I want to encourage you to read the Bible, but also to follow it. Live by what it says to do. This message is the production of Truth Ignited Ministry. If you would like to dig deeper into a pronomy Christian faith, be sure to visit truthignited.com. If you would like to financially support Truth Ignited Ministry, you can do so through Cash App by using $Truth Ignited. Thank you for listening. Blessings and shalom.